Hello and welcome to the new season of the Drawn and Redrawn, the Making of India's Internal Boundaries podcast. This is a part of a larger India State Stories project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is an undertaking by the Centre for Legislative Education and Research at Flame University in Pune. In this new season, we embark on a journey through the fascinating histories and narratives of each Indian state and union territories, exploring the pivotal events, influential personalities, and societal transformations that have shaped the subcontinent. In today's episode, let's understand how India utilizes a quasi-federal system of governance that strategically distributes administrative, legislative, and financial responsibilities across three levels: the central union, regional states, and local bodies. This episode is based on a corresponding article written by our team at India State Stories. These articles have been converted to audio conversations with the help of Google's Notebook LM. You can find the relevant article link in the show notes. Now, let's dive into the conversation.
I want to start with a bit of a visualization exercise. Picture the map of India.
Okay.
You see the outline, right? That familiar diamond shape narrowing down into the ocean. And inside, you see the states. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh. It feels solid. It feels like geology. Like those lines have been there forever.
It's what you might call the static image fallacy. We treat a political map like it's a photograph, a captured moment that's just permanent.
Right.
But if you actually dig into the data, the map of India isn't a photograph at all. It's a movie.
And a pretty chaotic movie at that.
Exactly. It's a high-speed time-lapse. You've got lines being drawn, erased, merged, and split apart over and over again.
That is exactly what hit me when I started going through the source material for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at a document called State Evolution 1951-2020 Journey in Brief, and some really, really dense data from the Indian State and District Evolution Project. And the mission today is to shatter that illusion of permanence. We want to unpack how India went from what the source calls a patchwork in 1947 to the map we see today.
And patchwork is, that's putting it politely. The story of India's internal borders is really the story of a democracy trying to figure itself out.
How so?
It's about identity, it's about administration, and yes, it's about politics.
So we're going to trace this evolution. We've got data here covering everything from these massive state splits down to the renaming of tiny islands and even, and this part really surprised me, the explosion of districts.
Oh, that district data is the hidden story. We'll get to that. But we have to start at the beginning, because if we dropped you into India in, say, 1948 or 1950, you just wouldn't recognize the internal map.
Okay, so let's talk about that inheritance. The source material uses that specific word, that India inherited a patchwork. What did that actually look like?
It was, administratively, it was a mess. You have to remember, the British didn't govern India as a single bloc. They had their provinces, which they ruled directly, and then they had the princely states.
The famous princely states. And the number mentioned in the source it's staggering.
562.
562.
Just think about the logistics of that. You had huge states like Hyderabad or Kashmir, in the size of European countries. And then you had tiny little estates that were just a few villages.
Wow.
And here's the key point from our source. These borders had little linguistic or cultural basis.
Right. They weren't drawn because, everyone here speaks the same language. They were drawn because some British general signed a treaty with a local ruler in, the 1800s.
Precisely. It was a map defined by conquest and negotiation, not by the people living there. So you'd have a border just cutting right through a community. Same language, same culture, but one side was British India, the other was a princely state.
So independence happens, 1947. The British leave. And the new Indian government is left holding this jigsaw puzzle where none of the pieces fit.
And they knew they couldn't keep it that way. You can't run a modern democracy on a feudal map. The Congress Party had actually been planning for this. They had this idea of linguistic provinces.
The logic being, if the government speaks the language of the people, democracy is just more accessible.
Exactly. If you speak Telugu, you should be in a state where the administration is in Telugu.
Yeah.
If you speak Marathi, the courts and the forms should be in Marathi.
Sounds simple.
It sounds simple, but actually doing it, absolute chaos.
Which brings us to what I was calling the Big Bang of the Indian map. The source highlights the States Reorganization Commission, the SRC, from 53 to 55.
This is the pivotal moment. The SRC Act of 1956. If you look at the table in the source, acts related to state reorganization. The 1956 entry is just. It's crowded.
It's a whole laundry list. I'm looking at it now. Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh. It's like they put the entire country into a blender and just poured out a new map.
In a way, they did. They merged those hundreds of princely identities into these large, viable units based on language, an administrative feat of, well, epic proportions. The goal was consolidation.
Okay, so 1956 happens. Lines are redrawn. We have these big linguistic states. So everyone's happy. Map's done.
Huh. If only. No, the source makes it very clear that while the 56 reorganization solved some big problems, it immediately created new ones.
The source mentions it created apprehensions.
Right, apprehensions among tribal and ethnic minorities.
Yeah.
Because if you create a giant state based on, say, the Assamese language, what happens to the tribes in the hills who don't speak Assamese and have a completely different culture?
They feel swallowed up.
Exactly. And this brings us to the Northeast exception. This is a fascinating part of the data because it shows a real shift in the reason for drawing borders. It stopped being just about language.
And started being about ethnicity and identity.
Right, and tribal identity.
Yeah.
The source points specifically to Nagaland here. Nagaland was the first to really resist that linguistic model. The data notes this wasn't just a request, it was a political agitation and demand for independence.
Which eventually forced the government's hand.
It did. Statehood was granted in 1963. And that's so important because Nagaland set a precedent. It proved you didn't have to be a massive linguistic group to get a state. You could be a smaller tribal identity, and if you pushed hard enough,
You could reshape the map.
you could. And looking at the timeline, the floodgates sort of opened after that,
It really did. You see Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, they all kind of follow that same path.
Asserting a distinct identity, yeah.
But it wasn't just the Northeast, was it? Even those big linguistic states from the 50s started to crack.
I'm looking at the 1960s on this table. The Bombay Reorganization Act of 1960.
A classic example, Bombay State was this massive experiment. It had Gujarati speakers and Marathi speakers all in one giant unit.
It didn't work.
No, the friction was too high. So in 1960, they split it, Maharashtra and Gujarat. And then just a few years later, 1966, Punjab gets reorganized.
Right. And again, this was about refining those linguistic lines, carving out the Hindi-speaking areas to create Haryana. The hill areas went to Himachal Pradesh, leaving a Punjabi-speaking Punjab.
So the map was constantly being fine-tuned. It's like they built the house in 56, but then spent the next 30 years moving all the walls around.
That's a great analogy.
Huh.
And speaking of moving things, we have to talk about the names.
Yes. The acts related to state name alteration. I found this table surprisingly moving, actually.
Okay.
Well, we tend to forget that the names we use today, they weren't always there. These renames feel like reclaiming an identity.
Absolutely. A name is a claim to history. Look at 1968 in the source.
The Madras state, alteration of name act.
Right. Madras was a colonial label. It became Tamil Nadu, the land of the Tamils. That's a powerful political statement.
It's saying this land belongs to the culture, not just the administration.
And you see it again. Mysore becomes Karnataka in 1973.
And in that same year, the Lakadive, Minicoy, and Amindivi Islands became
Lakshadweep. Thank goodness.
much easier to say.
Yes, much easier on the cartographers.
Yeah.
But it keeps going. Pondicherry became Puducherry in 2006. Orissa became Odisha in 2010. These changes are about saying, this is how we say it, so this is how the map should say it.
It really underlines that the map reflects how people see themselves. But let's fast forward. We get through the 20th century, we enter the new millennium, the year 2000,
The modern era.
and suddenly the map changes again. But the source notes a shift in the why. It's not really about language anymore, is it?
No. By 2000, the linguistic battles were mostly settled. The new driver was administrative efficiency and regional development.
Explain that.
Well, take the three states created in 2000, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Uttarakhand.
Right, carved out of Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh.
Now, the people in Uttarakhand spoke a version of Hindi, just like in UP, so it wasn't language. The argument was, we're a hill region. You're the plains. Your policies don't work for us. We're being neglected because the state is just too big.
That makes sense. I mean, Uttar Pradesh is massive. Trying to govern the Himalayas from Lucknow seems, well, disconnected.
Exactly. So this was the small states movement. The idea that smaller units are easier to manage, easier to develop. And that logic has carried forward
To 2014.
to 2014 with the creation of Telangana, a massive political event. And again, both Telangana and Andhra Pradesh are Telugu-speaking regions. But the demand was based on resources, on jobs, and this sense of historical discrimination.
And then the most recent big shift in our source, 2019, the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir.
Now, we have to be precise here because the source is very specific about this.
It describes it as a political move arising out of the abrogation of Article 370.
Correct.
Yeah.
And structurally, this is unique in our whole data set. I mean, usually we see regions fighting to become states. Here, a state was reorganized into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
It really shows the power the central government has over the map. It's not just a bottom-up expression of what people want.
It's a two-way street.
It can be a top-down tool of governance and control.
It always has been.
So we've looked at the big picture, the states. But the source material has this whole other section that I honestly found even more mind-blowing. It calls it the overlooked story,
The
the
district.
building blocks. We focus on those heavy black lines at the state borders, but the thinner lines inside, the district lines, they're moving at breakneck speed.
The data here is genuinely startling. Between 1951 and 2024, the number of districts in India increased by 2.5 times.
2.5 times.
Think about what that means. We started with around 300 districts. Now we're well over 700.
Why? Is the population just growing that fast?
Population is part of it. You can't manage 10 million people with the same infrastructure you used for 1 million. You need more collectors, more police superintendents. You have to slice the pie center to manage it.
But looking at the recent examples in the text, it feels like it's becoming almost competitive.
It's definitely a political strategy now. I mean, look at Andhra Pradesh in 2022.
They went from 13 districts to 26.
Overnight, just doubled the number of districts.
And Rajasthan in 2023.
From 33 to 50. That's 17 new districts in a single year.
17. Imagine the logistics. You have to build 17 new district headquarters, appoint 17 new collectors. Why do it all at once?
Visibility. If you're a chief minister, creating a new district is a tangible gift to your voters. Suddenly, the district headquarters isn't 150 kilometers away, it's 20 kilometers away. Land prices go up. Government jobs are created. It brings the state closer to the citizen.
That makes sense. But looking at the data from the Indian State and District Evolution Project, this kind of haphazard splitting creates some wild disparities. It feels like there's no standard definition of what a district even is.
Oh, there's absolutely no standard. It's arbitrary.
The comparisons in the source are just.
Right.
They're wild. Let's look at population. We have Dibang Valley in Arunachal Pradesh.
Which, according to the census figures in the source, had a population of just 8,004 people.
8,000. I mean, that's a large apartment complex in a metro city.
And then you compare that to Thane district in Maharashtra before it was split.
Which have...
It was surpassing 10 million people.
So administratively, these are the same unit. They're both districts. But one has 8,000 people and the other has 10 million. How do you even govern those two things with the same rule book?
You can't, really. That's the challenge. And the geography is just as stark. The source compares Kutch in Gujarat to central Delhi.
I know, Kutch is big.
It's over 45,000 square kilometers. A massive desert expanse.
And central Delhi.
21 square kilometers.
Wait, 21.
21.
Okay, so let me get this straight. 45,000 versus 21. Kutch is basically the size of Denmark, and central Delhi is, I don't know, the size of an airport?
Pretty much. Yet on the list, they're equals. They both have district magistrate. They're both the fundamental unit of administration.
It really makes you wonder if district is even a useful term when it covers such a massive range of realities. And it also makes you wonder what the map will look like in another 10 years.
That is the question the source leaves us with.
So let's step back and synthesize this. We've gone from 562 princely states to linguistic reorganization, to tribal homelands, to administrative splitting, and now this explosion of districts.
The big takeaway, I think, is that the map of India isn't really geography. It's negotiation.
Negotiation between who?
Between the state and the people. The lines shift as the needs shift. In the 50s, the need was unify us. In the 60s, it was recognize our language. Now it's give us better services, give us recognition, give us a district headquarters.
So the lines on the map are just the scar tissue of these negotiations.
That's a good way to put it.
The source ends with some open questions that I think are worth chewing on. What drives the next split?
And how likely is it that in the next decade we will witness new states?
That's the big one, because we tend to think, okay, we're done. This is India, 28 states, 8 union territories, final answer.
But history suggests otherwise. I mean, there are still pending demands. Vidarbha in Maharashtra, Bodoland in Assam, Gorkhaland in West Bengal. The pressures are still there.
And if a state like Rajasthan can add 17 districts in a single year just for better governance or, for votes, then the fluidity is definitely still there.
Absolutely. If we accept that the map has been redrawn constantly for 70 years to fix the patchwork of the past, why would we assume the current version is the final draft?
It feels more like we're on version 4.0, just waiting for the next update to download.
Waiting for the next edit.
That is something to think about next time you look at a wall map. Don't get too attached to those lines. They might move sooner than you think. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the shifting borders of India.
Always a pleasure to explore the data.
See you next time.